Hello again, welcome back to the Weekend Handyman. Today today we're working on the white crust rocket, and what we're getting back to is getting the rocker in place. So today I have to get the outer rocker panel. That's the last panel, the rocker panel that needs to get put back into place, and then I have to make a dog leg piece to fit into there. So let's get started. Alright, I'm about halfway through getting the outer rocker panel in place. My method for doing this is get a few spot welds on top here. They're a little bit boogery, but they were just quick to hold it in place. And then I would take a jack and a block to push up the underside here to match up with the rocker panel, or the inner rocker panel I should say. And then would take a clamp and clamp the two pieces together to make sure they're as close, or perfectly close rather. And then I would just fill my spot welds in with weld. So I did all that. The door shuts just fine. And lines up pretty good. It's a little bit close here, but I'm not an expert body guy, so the door shuts. That's all that matters. Next, I have to go in and do a weld here, line up these pieces of metal, and I think that's good. It is a rainy morning here, which is actually a good thing. It's been a while since we've got rain over here in the Northeast, more specifically Massachusetts, so we do need the rain. But yesterday I was able to finish the outer rocker panel and I got my dog leg piece in. I honestly forget the last thing that I filmed on camera for you, but the rocker panel went in nicely. The dog leg panel came out better than the other side, at least. I'm still far from an expert with bodywork at all, but there's stuff here which is better than it was. But well, the only thing I have left to do before I can put a final coating on this is I'm going to go ahead and take silicone and fill in all the seams with that, and that'll just make sure it's all sealed around all the edges back here and where the floor is, under here and whatnot, to keep shit from getting in there too much. I've used both an actual seam sealer that you buy at like an AutoZone or an Napa, and I've also used just straight silicone. The only real difference I've noticed is that the actual seam sealer that you buy from a Napa or whatnot allows paint to stick to it better. Silicone, the paint doesn't quite like to stick to it quite as much, so the silicone is a lot cheaper though. So what I've found that I can do, or you can do too, is paint everything the color that you want. So if we're doing a floor, paint it, primer it, then do a black, maybe an undercoating like a truck bed liner of some sort. Then seam seal everything with silicone, and then after the fact let it dry for the full 24 hours or however many hours it is, and then just throw a quick blast of paint over it to blend it all in. And that's the best way to get the paint to stick to the silicone, otherwise it'll come right off pretty quickly. Or you could spend the extra money on the seam sealer, which I would then get the panel in there, and then do the seam sealer, then prime and paint it, and that'll look just fine. But after I do that, I can then put the interior back together a little bit so I can drive it around and whatnot. And well, not that I'm going to, but the interior can come back together. And then for the outside here, I have Monster liner that I'm going to put on this side and that side. White Monster liner to be exact, so it at least matches a little bit. So after I do the silicone, vacuum out the floor here because it's a little bit dusty, put the interior back together, hopefully it'll be a lot drier out here. As it stands now, I'm going to blow air through everything to make sure it's all clean, or I'm going to at least seam seal, but everything is all wet and whatnot, so I don't want to do the monster liner quite yet, but I have a couple errands to run later, so hopefully it'll be dry by then. So, that's that. Alright, we're back over here on the driver's side, because I'm going to start to do the bed lining process on this, which I'm going to use monster liner. So basically what I'm going to do is just bed line from this line down all the way under to the pinch seam. In the back of the pinch seam, I'll just leave the Rust-Oleum truck bed liner. It'll be just fine. That'll cover up this. It'll cover up all this. And it will also cover up this. So, I mean, that's that. I'll just end up masking off this. I'm not going to bother taking off these trim pieces. They're a big pain in the ass to get off, and they'd be a big pain in the ass to put back on. And I kind of like how they break up the whiteness all the way down across, and they match the, bumper ends on the front and the back, which I'm going to keep on there, so I'm not planning on taking those off. You can think what you want, but they're staying on there. So, what I went out and got, or not went out, I ordered that offline, is monster liner. It's just the bed liner, kind of like Herculiner or whatnot. I'm not sure how it compares to Herculiner. I've never used monster liner. I've only ever used Herculiner. Then I've started to use the Rust-Oleum truck bed liner. So we'll see how it works. You do have to mix it up with some hardening catalyst of some sort, and then you put it in these cups or something. It does come with instructions that I've skimmed through once. If you order a monster liner yourself, obviously you read those yourself. I'm not going to bother trying to explain exactly how this works, but in the general gist of it, if you just got normal monster liner that's not tintable, you really just have to mix your can of this with your can of the catalyst together in a can, mix it up for a few minutes, which they provide these for you, which you put in the drill to mix up like this. Then you pour it out into a pan and use your rollers to roll it onto wherever you're rolling it onto, whether it's a truck bed, a body panel, rocker panels, whatever you have. I got tintable, however, meaning that I can color it, which of course I got white, so it matches the white body of the Jeep. So I have to take an extra step and not only mix this can with this catalyst, but then have to mix in this tint or whatever, which will make it white. And that adds an extra step, but it also means you have to make sure it's mixed extra good, otherwise the color won't be able to get all the way through it. So, I'm going to study the instructions a little bit more, make sure I'm going to do all these steps correctly, and then I'll get to rolling it onto the Jeep after masking off the trim pieces. Alright, so I'm going to start the process of mixing my color, my catalyst and whatnot, my monster liner. This isn't meant to be like a how-to step-by-step process to put this monster liner together, but just sort of, I don't know, figured I'd give you an idea of how it works. That almost hit me in the eye. This is probably how you're actually supposed to do that. Since that didn't just come up and try and take my eyeball out. Anyways, it actually says to mix it for 3 minutes first. And then, after you mix it, then it says to dump the color in. And then it says to fill this with an MEK solvent or a acetone. I'm just going to dump a little bit of lacquer thinner in there. It's almost the same. Lacquer thinner compared to an acetone or MEK has the same things, but the lacquer thinner is actually more of a mixture of like acetone and a couple other things. It'll work just the same, but it doesn't evaporate quite as much or as fast. So I'm gonna dump a little bit in there. And then you're supposed to mix this together. So once you have the color and a little bit of acetone or MEK, I use lacquer thinner in here. It says to mix it for 4 to 5 minutes and stopping every 2 minutes to scrape the sides of the can. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So now my bed liner is very, very white. Hopefully it's as white as the Jeep is. So next I'm supposed to then dump this into one of these containers and then mix in the catalyst. So I'm going to do all that just like so. Then this catalyst you're supposed to knead for a bit. This has an interesting smell to it. And then you're supposed to mix that in there for 4 minutes. Alright, so then at this point, what you're supposed to do is dump this back into this can, which will now fill more than this can can take, of course. So you're supposed to fill it until it's about an inch or so below the top of the can, and then use what's left in this to sort of stuff into the corners of whatever it is you're coating. In my case, it'll be like the corners of where the rocker and the other body panels meet, and then I'll do the inside of the door jamb with whatever's left over in this with a brush. The kit does also include rollers. If you order a kit, or if you order it separately, you can get the rollers too. For a rolling pan, I'm going to end up using this broken dustpan thing. But in between coats, it says you can reseal this, and it'll last until you need to do the second coat. These are actually two. So yeah. So I ordered 2 of these smaller cans, because I wasn't sure exactly how much I was going to need. It's supposedly this size will do rocker panels, but I'm doing more than just the rocker panels. I'm doing also up on the doors, so that's why I got 2 of them just in case. But at this point, I'm going to do what it says, just dump this back into here, and then have at it. Alright, like I said, I'm just going to take what's left in here and just sort of dab it into all these edges and whatnot to make sure it gets it in there. It is actually pretty thick stuff. I'm sure that catalyst is also making it dry a bit as I'm doing this. This is actually very similar to how Percoliner works. The instructions tell you to work it in with a brush in all of your edges and corners first, and then roll it on. In Monster Liner, the roller is what provides you the texture. Percoliner actually has chunks of stuff in it that actually give it the texture, along with the roller as well. Monster Liner is just like a really, really thick paint, for lack of a better way to describe it, and the roller pulling the paint or coating up gives it the texture. It ends up being, as far as I know, it ends up being a smoother texture as opposed to Herculiner. Herculiner is a rougher texture because it actually has stuff in it that give it the texture, whereas this, it's just the act of the roller pulling the coating up off of the surface that give it the texture. Instructions recommend 2 coats, which seems like it's about going to be what'll do it. The first coat, as the instructions say, won't cover your surface completely, and that seems to be the case. Alright, I have that coated about as good as I want to get. I'm going to try the roller next. This is actually messier than I expected. I should probably cover this concrete a little bit so I don't get it covered in bed liner. Huh. Well, yeah, this texture is actually coming out quite nice, actually. I'm not super concerned about the concrete because I'm going to come back and power wash this entire area, but it is definitely something to consider. This coating is splattering more than I expected. So this is after the first coat. On this camera, it looks as though it's covered really, really well, but in reality it hasn't covered all that well after the first coat, so you do need 2 full coats. But according to the instructions, the dry time in between coats is 2 hours. So, that being said, obviously you have to reseal the can. According to the instructions, the can life of this product, once it's opened, is 6 to 10 hours, so there's more than enough time to do so. But in between coats, once you reopen the can, it does recommend that you mix it. So, in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead, prep and prepare the other side, do 1 coat on the other side, and then by then, it might be just time to do a second coat on this side. So, I'm going to do all that, and I'll catch you back once it's all said and done later today. And I did go and grab a tarp. Of course, it's too late now that I've done 1 coat, but I'll be able to move it over to the other side, and then I'll use it when I do the second coats. Alright, so this is after 2 full coats, and the coverage is very good. At the end of doing 2 coats on this side and 2 coats on the other, I actually had enough left over in my can, so I did the underside of the rocker panels as well with both sides. Be prepared if you do this to get very messy. Definitely don't wear clothes you want to keep, or want to keep looking nice rather, because it'll drip, and when you're rolling, it comes spraying off the roller quite a bit too. But that's just how it goes, I guess. It says right after you're done doing the second coat to peel the tape off right away. So I just finished doing that, cleaned up a little bit. I want to peel the tape off. Now again, I admit that doing this with these trim pieces still on is actually the lazy way, but for the nature of this Jeep being that it's just a beater, it works out just fine. Or worked out just fine, I should say. Came out good in here too. This side also came out just as good. And like I was saying, I had just enough to do what's exposed of the inner rocker panel on both sides. Again, like I was saying, it makes a huge mess at everything, but that's how painting goes. This is the can I was using to dump into my roller tray. As it turns out, one of these 28 ounce containers was enough to do both rocker panels, the bit of the door that I did, and the part of the inner panel that is exposed. So if you want to do rocker panels, you only need to get one of these 28 ounce containers as opposed to 2, because at the time I wasn't sure how much it would cover or how much I would need, so I had bought 2, but I have an extra one now. An extra catalyst, an extra tintable, or an extra tint, and an extra 28 ounces of the tintable Mazda liner. This container is all the rollers and shit that kind of get destroyed over the time. If what really happens, or what really the downfall of the rollers ends up being, is that they start to break apart as you start to use them. I almost forgot to mention the fact that the instructions call for 24 hours for it to be fully dried. If you want it to just be solid, it only takes a couple hours, and then you can, you know, start to move your vehicle around, stuff like that. But it takes 24 hours for it to be completely dry. So if you're doing this in the bed of your truck, you can go drive the truck after a couple hours, and it'll be hard enough to do that. But don't load anything in your truck bed until it's at least 24 hours, as long as it's been sitting for 24 hours. So I'll let this sit for a couple hours, and then I'll move this Jeep out of the way because I got to pull the red one back up here to do something else. So that'll do it for this installment of the white crust rocket, the white clusterfuck, the white Jeep snowflake Q-tip. It's been called a lot of different things, and not all of them are appropriate depending on the company you're with. But both rocker panels are done, the floors are done, dog legs are all done for now. Who knows how long this Jeep will actually last. It's still got some bad areas, but it'll last a little bit longer now. I did notice when I was rolling around under it a couple days, or the past couple days, that I do have a U-joint that is bad in the front drive shaft. And that U-joint happens to be in the double cardan joint. So I'll have to take that down and replace that before I start using four-wheel drive for the winter. But be sure to check us out on Facebook. Link is in the description. Be sure to subscribe. The button is going to be down there somewhere, of course, if you're used to using YouTube. And make sure you leave us a comment. And best yet is to share this video with some friends.